Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston Station, we are ready for the event.
NPR, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Joshua Johnson with NPR's 1A broadcast. How do you hear me?
Hello, Joshua. We hear you loud and clear. Welcome to the International Space Station.
Thank you, Scott and Norishige. It's so great to have some time with you, and I wonder, by way of starting our conversation, first of all, congratulations on your first space flight. I know you have trained for years for this. I wonder what surprised you the most about living aboard the International Space Station. Was there anything that even your training did not fully prepare you for? Scott, why don't we start with you?
The training was long and it was intense. It was and very much in detail. There have not been any surprises here. But one thing that I have been wowed by is just the immense beauty of being up here, being in a quiet environment with lots of work to do and a great view.
Norishige, what about you? Anything about being in space that surprised you or that was different than what you expected?
Operationally, nothing is surprising to me. Everything is all being trained, and I was capable to do anything about the operation on board the space station. But living in space is a little bit different. We cannot simulate the microgravity, and it took a little bit time to adjust myself in this special, unique environment.
Well, that kind of leads me to my next question, understanding that it is very regimented. I imagine that you two obviously work well in that kind of environment. I bet there are plenty of people who wouldn't. Would you describe for people who don't have the benefit of going to space, what kind of person it takes to spend as much time as you spend on the International Space Station? What are the qualities of a good astronaut, and what are some of the qualities that would disqualify someone from doing what you're doing? Scott?
Well, first you have to be physically fit. It's very physically demanding to do all the jobs around here, especially spacewalking. It takes an awful lot physically. But the other side of it too is you got to be good with people. You got to be good with systems. You got to be good with science, technology, engineering, and math. You got to have good patience. You got to be able to work your way through complex problems where there may be 3 or 4 or 5 different answers, and be able to invite, include, and inspire those around you to take a team approach to get to a team conclusion and meet the objective.
Norishige, talk about how you reach those kind of team conclusions. I imagine that being part of an international team, that being able to collaborate across cultures is more important than ever. How do you make that work? What does it take?
Well, first of all, I have good crewmates, the Scott, and we have Russian commander Anton, and they are very nice people and very easy to work with. And the same on the ground, the flight controllers in Houston, Europe, in Japan, Moscow, they are very intelligent and also very nice to work with. So in that environment, I've been trained for years in that environment, and naturally I acquire same kind of nature as an astronaut. So to me, it's very natural.
Scott, where are you right now? What part of the Earth are you orbiting over? What can you see?
Joshua, I didn't look before we got here, but we do 16 orbits every day, and pretty much we can see anything from, depending on where the orbit is, from Hawaii to the West Coast, and then sometimes across the United States. We typically see South America, and then over into Europe and down across Africa and the Middle East. And I tell you what, you can see it 4 or 5 times a day. It's just amazing.
Scott, do you have a favorite vista from space? Is there any part of the Earth that just arrests you every time you float by it?
You know, I like North America. I've traveled most of the roads, coast to coast, 10 or 15 times in my lifetime. I've visited lots of the parks, Yosemite, Yellowstone, Sequoia, Miles Standish on the East Coast. And I'll tell you, it's just a beautiful country. I love seeing the roads. I love seeing the towns. And I love thinking about the history when I see the country and how it's developed.
Let me ask you about some of the work that you're doing on the space station. Norishige, describe for us a typical, if there is such a thing, a typical day of work for you. I understand that your work days are about 12 hours each. Is that right?
Yes, that sounds about right. We are actually waking up on 6 in the morning and starting work about 7. And we are typically working on the science and also maintenance on the space station. Also, we need every day 2.5 hours workout to keep our bone and muscle healthy. And we're gonna finish our work around 7 p.m. With the tag up with ground control team. So 12 hours work days sounds right to me.
And Norishige, what do you do when you're off work in your downtime? I mean, do you get the weekends off, or are you basically working 7 days?
We have weekends off, so 2 days weekend. I usually do cleaning and also watching, observing Earth. Just watching is wonderful and amazing experience. And sometimes taking pictures of the Earth, that's also fun.
Scott, this is a serious question, but do you guys get Netflix up there? And I only ask because I imagine that being in space is phenomenal, but after a while, you must really want to connect back with what's going on the Earth, the latest movies and popular culture and current events. Do you have access to that up in space, or are you completely disconnected from Earth for your time on the station?
No, so we don't have live connection with Netflix or Amazon Video or anything like that. But what we do is we can request a movie and they'll uplink it. And so when we have a few moments and the crew wants to get together, we can set up a projector and watch a movie. We also have other ways that, they'll send us uplink to us news, but it's typically from a day, 2 days before when you get it. So nothing we really gets live unless we're getting it verbally or via email. On the day of, but it's not a bad situation. There's lots of movies up here in the data bank, and that we can pull up if if we have the spare time. I'm not a big TV watcher or movie watcher, so I don't spend a lot of time doing that up here. It's looking out the window and taking pictures and enjoying the ISS and all its marvelous systems up here is really what I want to do for the 6 months that I'm here.
And you're probably just as well getting the news on a day's delay. There's nothing going on down here. We got lots of questions from some of our listeners, particularly about the work that you're doing. Eileen in Anderson, Indiana, wanted to know if you've discovered something or are working on something that will benefit us here on Earth. Norishige, what do you say?
Well, since I'm a medical doctor, I am interested in the medical aspect of the experiment. We are collecting the blood, saliva, urine, and examine this material on the ground. And also, I am participated in some medical experiment. For example, the European airway monitoring experiment that is examining the contents of the breath of the astronaut, and by examining that breath, we can measure the information inside the lung. That kind of experiment leads to the easier or earlier diagnosis of the pulmonary disease on the ground. So it's very beneficial for not only for the astronaut but also the people on the Earth.
You're also both experimenting with growing vegetables in space. Toast Coaster tweeted, "What would you most like to grow on the space station?" Scott?
I think I'd like to grow watermelon. They're just so full of water and refreshing. It'd be great to have fresh watermelon up here.
I heard something about Anheuser-Busch working with the space station on experimenting with growing barley in space. Scott, is that so? And I assume there are certain things you cannot do with the barley you grow, right?
I have not seen any barley here yet. It may be coming in the future, but I'm sure everybody's gears are turning now on that one.
Victor wanted to know what you do when space junk approaches the space station. Norishige, what's done with space junk? And how much of it do you encounter?
Yes, we have a special protecting shield on the space station, so the small debris are not a problem for us, and it's basically protected by the shield. And if we have a big space junk approaching to the ISS, we have a capability to avoid that junk using a thruster on the Russian vehicle or thrusters engines on the ISS, so we can avoid that space junk.
Let me ask you also, Norishige, about the effects of being in space on the body. I've heard in a variety of ways that being in space can take a real toll on the body in some ways, and it changes the function, the physiology, even your height because your spinal cord decompresses. What are some of the effects that you are feeling or noticing there?
Yes, generally after the insertion to the orbit, we feel space motion sickness, and because of the microgravity, our sensation of the up-down is confused, and we got sick and sometimes vomit. But fortunately, I did not have experienced such space motion sickness. And the other one is fluid shift. Basically, the body blood and the other body fluid are coming upward to the face and the upper part of the body. That makes us headache or nausea or puffiness of the face. And as you may see, my face is a little bit puffier than usual.
Yeah, I just looking at you on NASA TV, I can kind of see, the roundness of your face compared to your bio picture that's on the web. Scott, I kind of wonder, as it relates to that, how do you prepare for that? I mean, that must be one of those aspects of life on a space station that they can tell you about, but there's not really a way to simulate that on Earth, is there? I mean, you don't really know what that'll feel like until you get there, right?
That's pretty true. In Baikonur, they have a couple of machines the tables that we strap to, and they hang us upside down for a little while, and then we spin around in a chair, and we put our body through we make ourselves feel pretty sick. But it helps a little bit. At least I think it helps. But you're right. You never really know for sure until you get here, and you don't get the full effect until you get here. So there's really no way to simulate it perfectly. But it's just a process, and we've had hundreds of people endure that process and do well. So we understand it pretty well, and we all expect that people will go through it. There'll be some uncomfort, but it'll go away.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's training or if that's hazing. You may want to ask some questions later on, but at least it seems to be working. You guys seem to be doing pretty well. Let me go back to the projects that you're doing regarding plants in zero gravity. What have you learned about the way that plants grow in space? Anything that advances our knowledge of botany or that might be applicable on Earth?
Well, first of all, we can grow the plants on orbit. This is very artificial environment. Of course, it's not sufficient to feed astronauts, but we actually grow the lettuce and ate it, and it was very delicious. And maybe using this technology, we can make plants in the very for example, the desert or not suitable for the agriculture, but we can still make food by using this technology.
I have to ask you about walking in space. Both of you, as I understand it, had spacewalks earlier this year. Scott, what was that like, the very first time that you actually stepped out into open space? Arduous, as I understand it, very physical, but what went through your head? What went through your heart the very first time you floated in space?
Well, the first thing that was in my head when the hatch opened is all the fresh rays of light came right into the airlock, and it had been the first time that I had seen fresh light, not looking through a window, but just right there. And so that was when my brain clicked and said, wow, we're going outside, and it's going to be really cool. When I got outside, by that time I had the switch thrown in my head, and it was all about taking care of business. I went out and just started feeling what the responses were like on how I have to move my body and get used to the environment, because we train in a pool where we have neutral buoyancy, but you still have a lot of drag with the water. So it's a little bit different when you go outside here in space without the water. But it was an amazing experience, and when we had a few minutes to relax, look down and see the Earth, it's absolutely mind-boggling to be that close to seeing such a big picture of nature and Earth and our atmosphere and how thin it is.
I know we're low on time, but another question from Sarah in Gilbertsville, Pennsylvania. She wanted to know, Norishige, maybe you can answer this one. Sarah wants to know, how do you maintain relationships with family and friends on Earth when you're away for so long, for your 6 months on the space station?
Yes, we can send and receive email, and every weekend we have a family conference. It's basically a video conference, so I can see my family and friends. I can listen from the news in Japan from them, and it's very fun time.
I wonder, Scott, if I could ask you about the future of the International Space Station. There's been some talk of the Trump administration privatizing the International Space Station. I believe it's funded through 2024. What do you see as the future of international participation in space?
Well, as far as the space station goes, I'm sure it's going to continue for a long time once they identify some partners that might want to help keep it running and keep it going. It's just so valuable. We have such a great national laboratory up here, lots of resources to do testing in an environment like nothing we could ever achieve on Earth. It's very unique and very valuable, and we need it to do all of the research and some of the development that we need to get back to the moon and then on to Mars. So it's valuable. International partnership, I see it being stronger than ever in the future. We're going to go back to the moon, and we're going to head into deep space locations, and we're going to need an international partnership to do it. So I think what you're seeing here as far as an international partnership goes on this space station is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the rest of the world working together to get humans into deep space.
And before we let you go, Norishige, I hope you two know how important the work is that you're both doing. And I know that you two know how crazy things are on Earth right now. Does it ever feel like a relief, at the very least an honor for sure, but maybe a relief to have a chance to be up in space while the rest of us deal with the troubles of the world?
Yes, actually, because of the communication is very developed, and always we can communicate with friends and the flight controllers on the ground. So I do not feel detached from the Earth. So to me, it's very natural. It's isolated, but still I'm connected to the ground. So no problem for me.
And Scott, briefly, same question before we let you go.
Yeah, same for me. I still feel like I'm part of it. My news might be a day or two late, but keeping up with what's going on and talking to my relatives, I got a lot of email going back and forth. I feel as much a part of life on Earth as I do in space. I just happen to be representing from space at this moment in time. So it's an honor and it's a privilege, and it'll be good to bring all this experience back home and give it back to the American people.
Well, the honor and the privilege was ours for being able to speak with you. Scott Tingle and Norishige Kanai. Gentlemen, best to you in space. Stay safe, work hard, and thank you both for talking to us.
Thank you, Joshua. Have a great day.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event.
Thank you, all participants with NPR. Station, we are now resuming operational audio communications.